Last week I said the Prime Minister may have listened to me when I encouraged him about his tone in addressing the people, in addressing the citizens of our country. And then when I said that, I gave an encouragement to our opposition leader, and I was hoping that she would also listen to me and there would be some changes in how our opposition approaches things. And I think they listened. There's a new statement where the opposition leader spoke on the topic of making the shots, making the vaccines mandatory in schools, and she actually made cogent points that has some credence to it. And I always wonder about this because I personally find the job of the opposition to be the easier job. It is. Especially speaking as someone who criticizes quite a bit. I fully understand that criticizing is a very easy thing to do. It's very easy to point at something that is running and see all the ways it could be running bad. It's an easy thing to do. It's not a particularly good, or it doesn't need some particularly special unique skill. Nearly every human has that ability to look at something and say, "Oh, look how it's going wrong." Critiquing is a skill, but having sensible critiques and criticisms that are actionable, something that can actually change. Criticizing something that cannot change nearly makes no sense, but having sensible, actionable criticisms are important. And that's where a good opposition comes in, where you could have some criticisms and critiques where the actionable nature of it, you could allow the citizens, the different people looking on to say, okay, these people have some idea of an alternative way to do this thing. So maybe they are an option out of it. And in this specific case with the pandemic, it's providing a lot of opportunity for that. The opportunity, though, I'm aware it's kind of a blind opportunity. It's as I was saying, it's easy to criticize, and especially in this pandemic, it's something new. It's easy to stand from the outside as a politician or as a YouTuber or TikToker as I am and see, well, if they did it this way, it would have been better. But you're not sure of that. But I guess that's the benefit to the politicians on the politician side of this pandemic. They can always say, hey, we would be able to do this way. Because the decisions that are being made in this pandemic, as I said before, a lot of them are what you would call lose-lose. There aren't many positive sides you could take in this decision. And as a politician who requires popular support to be elected, to make unpopular decisions is a difficult thing. That's one of the difficulties in the democratic system by itself. The democratic system, many people have the assumption that the democratic system is automatically a good thing for whatever you want to define good to be. But what makes that way? Who is to say that what the majority thinks is right or good is a good thing? If the majority thinks I should die, is that a good thing? Democracy itself has its problems. So, as a leader, if you're trying to make the best decisions for a country and you are in a democratic position, you could find yourself under some difficulty. So this is a beautiful opportunity. It sounds cruel to put it that way, but a beautiful political opportunity, probably a cruel human opportunity, but a beautiful political opportunity for opposition parties all over to look and specifically criticize certain things. Now, I think on the opposition party's sides, if you would like to be taken seriously as someone who wants to be better for whatever country it is you are in, it's a time to not criticize just for criticizing's sakes, because there are dangers out there that there were not year before. So you do not want to be on the side where you are putting your country at more risk. But it's an opportunity to show nuance, to show that you have that ability to see the difficulty in decisions, even when it's not your time to make the decisions. And I think there may be even political reward for that kind of mature observation and response. Nuance. But that might very well be wishful and hopeful thinking on my part. Let's see exactly what our opposition leader said. Kamla, no support for mandatory vaccination for children. Whilst advocating for parents to consult their doctors before getting their children vaccinated, opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar says she will not support mandatory vaccinations to get them back to school. I want to make it very clear that I do not support mandatory vaccinations. The Pfizer vaccine has been approved by the FDA for children. I have asked for parents to please talk to their doctors and consider taking their children to take the vaccine. But I do not support any move by this government to make it mandatory for children to take this vaccine. I will not support that. She said what government has proposed for the reopening of schools is nothing short of a nightmare. You are saying the vaccinated can go to school for face-to-face interaction with their teachers. You are saying if you are not vaccinated, stay home. Did you remember you stopped the most brilliant program of this time? Wow, what a beautiful time to bring it in. Now, I ain't even mad. I'm not even angry. She brings in here the laptop program. Do you remember that over 60,000 children do not have connectivity with Wi-Fi and do not have devices? You cut it, the laptop program, put them in this situation and then asking them to log on, go online, learn online, and if you are not vaccinated, stay home. Now, you have to give some credit where credit is due. For whatever other reasons there might have been, the partnership had that laptop program in, and had it been that every student continues having a... Wait, I think I've heard before that the laptop program is actually continuing in some form, but I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've been that close to the schooling in that sense. But if it was still in the full form that the partnership had it in, where every student has access to that laptop, it would have been easier to do this parallel schooling system that we are trying now. And if all the devices were issued from the state, from the government, from the Ministry of Education, from the central authority, it may have been easier also to have all the correct applications and programs already pre-installed on the devices, to allow for the classrooms and the systems to run smoothly. So there is an actual argument there, and there are some points there for the opposition to take. So Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, take your points and go with them. You have earned those points. Noting the number of school commissioning ceremonies in recent times, although children are not going to school, she suggested the money used for this purpose be invested in buying laptops for the foreseeable future because the pandemic is not going anywhere. We are seeing what's happening in other countries where you have wave upon wave. It looks as though we have to learn to live with this pandemic. It is not going away very soon. Listen, I agree with that statement. Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, I agree with that statement. This is something that I've been saying. I think we have to learn to live with it. Now, what exactly that statement looks like in everyday life, I think is yet to be decided. Now, not everyone, but a large number of people seem to be convinced fully that in order to learn to live with it, the first step is reaching that herd immunity threshold. Now, I keep saying that it seems the way this virus is mutating and changing, even if that threshold is attained, there would still be more long-lasting effects residual from this pandemic, and who knows how many of these variants we would see. Who knows how all of this would end, if it ever will end, what form it will be. We keep talking about the new normal, and should we be leaning more into the new normal? I guess that is a plausible argument where she asks, does it really make sense the amount we are investing in refurbishing and reopening all of these physical schools, while it seems like we really need to pay specific attention to the online schooling? Should there be some training? Should there be some equipment being purchased? I'm just thinking about that. in that sense. Are we thinking backwards now while we should be trying to move forward? Are we something that I've asked before with the new normal and the education system? Why does it seem like a lot of the things in the education system seem like we're fighting to try to attempt to get back to the way the education system was? Why we already know in the first place the way the education system was flawed, and maybe this opportunity might be one to see how we can improve it. That's a consideration. The opposition leader then went on to chide the prime minister because she asked the question that many people are asking also about the planning aspect of this, because it is there are some large gaps being left where people are wondering, why does there seem to be this massive lack of planning? We see this is a problem that could have been predicted, and we're reaching the part where we need a solution for the problem, and we're hearing, well, we aren't sure about that solution quite yet. Persad-Bissessar said this: did you, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, just implement this policy by VAPS? Did you ever speak to the teachers union? You did not want to hear anybody. This is her speaking about the implementation of the state of emergency also. You did not want to hear anybody. You did not want to hear the unions. You did not want to hear civil society. You did not want to hear the business community. You did not want my vote. You did not need it. Therefore, that charade we engaged in the parliament last Wednesday, she said in reference to the 3-month extension to the SOE and curfew, which required a simple majority vote for passage, again clearly shows you have no capacity, no will or wish for consultations. She advised Prime Minister, check yourself before you wreck yourself. This opposition leader is well into her 60s, I believe, if not somewhere close to 70s, but she's still up with the times. I believe those times may have been some time, probably early 2000s. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, Mr. Prime Minister. And there are some good points in there. As I keep saying, the decisions and policies that are being made at this time should be done very carefully. You should thread very carefully. She spoke about consultations, and as I also said earlier, the consultation aspect, I could understand from the government perspective where it's only so many consultations you can have. And yes, democracy is great, and we are in a democracy, but a democratic solution isn't necessarily always the best solution, and maybe they're looking to their experts for the solutions. But at the end of the day, we are in a democracy, and the society we live in, you rule by consent of the masses. The majority of us in the society must be okay with the direction that we are being led in. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to continue leading. And that's why consultations are still needed. Even if you hear from the experts, and what the experts say is this: if the entire society, or the majority of society, or a large enough proportion of society wants you to pay a different attention to it in a different direction than what the experts may want, I think it's in good interest to look at it. Because one of the difficulties, especially in this time as we're seeing things getting more difficult for some people, is if in a society people no longer have things to lose, they seem like we do not have that connection to the political process. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, the government is going to do their thing, and it's irrelevant what my opinion is of it. Then people will no longer engage in the proper political and legal political process. People would start to want to engage in processes outside of the regular legal framework that we have. And if you like living in a stable society our society may not necessarily be called non-violent, but with a lesser amount of violence, then it's in our best interest to want people to still have that motivation to remain to remain civil in society, if we'd put it that way, to still have that motivation to remain civil in society. If you look, for example, I saw this article out of Jamaica. Majority of prisoners say no to vaccine, and they're wondering why they're having educational programs through the prison to attempt to get more prisoners to take this vaccine and increase the uptake of this vaccine. It's something like 70% of the prisoners do not want the vaccine. Now, I'm thinking to myself, if I'm a prisoner and I'm in a position I don't want to be in, and then you tell me take this vaccine, and part of the premise of the vaccine isn't just for my own self-protection, but if I take this, I would help the greater society. And I'm in a position where I don't really care for the assistance of greater society because I don't like what they are doing to me right now. I could understand why many prisons are right now having low vaccine uptake. That kind of makes sense to me. A prisoner's choice in that case would be almost totally selfish, unless probably I wouldn't doubt. This would be a very interesting thing. The article does not have this, but I think it would be interesting to evaluate in one of these prisons among the vaccine choices. Going down this road, before I get to that, going down this road, I understand many times why so many very evil experiments end up happening in prisons, because a prison ecosystem offers some unique things. You could study certain things and see them very clearly. You get that kind of experimental vibe. Maybe that could question the entire idea of prison sometimes, but I guess that's another video. But it would be interesting to me to see the number of years someone has remaining on their sentence and compare that with their level of hesitancy, and see if there's any correlation with people who are going to stay incarcerated longer and people who are possibly going to leave in a much shorter time. I will not be surprised if there is, because generally speaking, as I said, people with nothing to lose generally act like people with nothing to lose. That's why you have to remain having that little interest always there. And it could seem sometimes, I could understand on the more conspiratorial side, why it could seem sometimes like the government is dangling that freedom and giving you a slight taste of it just to give you that anticipation of what you may have yet to come. And from the government side, it's an actual strategy, allowing people to see that, hey, you have some freedom coming here, let's just hold it down for a little longer. But if you keep doing that, after one, like, okay, you give me an opportunity to take a bite, and then you pull it away. Okay, that's funny the first time, and then you do it, and you pull it out. Probably the third time, I think there might be, I saw a meme once in a wedding where that was just cruel. But I understand that perspective. There's only so long you can dangle it for. Al-Rawi, state of emergency can end at any time. And I do not like this statement. The way they go through the statement and make it seem like it's the opportunity for it to end is just around the corner. Some different thing can happen overnight, and you may hear in the morning the state of emergency ends. If their reasoning for the state of emergency stands and their logic stands, this state of emergency cannot end before the 3 months expires. They say they need it for the curfew because we need to restrict that nighttime movement until enough people are vaccinated. Enough people are not going to be vaccinated within the next week. And the nighttime movement, if it increases a spike, if it causes a spike, and the Delta strain is in Trinidad, if it causes a spike, and it will cause a spike, then how could we ever stop it until the entirety of the country is inoculated, or until we reach that herd immunity part? It doesn't really add up that the anticipation of when it's going to end is just around the corner. But maybe that's the dangling of it right there, to give us the hope that soon it would all be over and we will be fine. And what would politicians be for if not selling dreams of hope? That's all I have for now. I hope you were informed or entertained or educated. And I will see you if you haven't clicked that like button. By the way, I didn't say that yet. So if you haven't clicked that yet and you are still here, please do tap that like button. Make sure it's engaged and drop a comment if you have something to say. And don't forget to subscribe if you are not subscribed. And I'll see you again tomorrow for the next one.
Feel the music rising with the time.